Good day and peace be upon you. Today I am going to show you how I have made hydroponic DWC buckets, deep water culture. I am a complete beginner and this is what I'm going to use. So regarding the tools, you just need a drill with both a 10 millimeter and a 3 millimeter drill bit. The easiest to use is of course the wooden drill bits, the ones that are meant for wood, because they have a little spike at the top which makes it much easier to cut through plastic. A marker, a scissors, a garden cutter, and then use some PVC tubing. So PVC tubing, this 3-meter PVC tubing I purchased from Builders. It cost me about 120 rand or so. Palm peat or cocoa peat, also from Builders, around 40 rand. We'll show you how we use that later. And then the actual things that we're going to use. So it's a bucket and a bucket lid. So here of course I've already cut the lid, but for demonstration's sake it's shown as full. But the bucket and the lid cost about 25 rand from one of the Chinese shops. And this elbow, it's a 13 millimeter elbow. It also costs 10 to 15 rand at Builders. This is actually a peg basket, and it was 16 rand. And I also purchased this from one of just the homeware, one of the Indian homeware or home item shops. And then the seeds I've got here, I've got peppers, sweet peppers. My other sweet peppers are not doing too well, so I'd like to test these out. Carrots, I haven't tried anything like carrots before, but I'd like to give it a go. And onions because I've got a big problem with aphids at the moment eating into my other plants, so I'd like to try out the onions and see whether they'll chase away the aphids. So let's get going. Step one was cutting the lid of the bucket so that my peg basket will fit inside. You could just buy a net basket with a lid from one of the hydroponic shops. I found it a bit difficult to find affordable ones near me, so I decided to cut the lid and fit the basket inside. To cut the lid, I used my garden cutter because it's got a nice spring, and that made it quite easy to cut through the lid after making a small hole to get in. It was relatively easy. I had initially tried to use the scissors, but it's quite difficult with the scissors. However, this tool makes it much easier. So as you see, here's my lid. It'll fit there. Of course, before I cut it, I had measured out to see how that would fit on. So that just fits directly in there. So once I place that, I'll be able to place the basket inside and it will sit comfortably. And I haven't lost the structural integrity of the lid because I didn't cut through this edge here, so it still has some strength. Alright, so that was the step one so far. let's move on to step 2 then. As I step over to step 2, I'm going to take my PVC tubing and cut it to size. However, I've also just marked the various lids which a net basket will go into, because once I've planted the seeds, I'm gonna completely forget what I've done. So I'm gonna measure out the height of the bucket, and I'm going to cut this tubing. I've cut my 3 pieces of tubing, and here I just like to give you some details about the buckets. These are 9-liter buckets, not the 20 liters that most people are talking about, but these are 9-liter buckets. So now I'm just going to make some markings on my tubing where I expect the net basket to sit, so that I know how full the water is in comparison to the net basket. This will probably be what the inside looks like. So I'm just going to make some markings. As you can see, I put a marking at each one of the rows, and let me just repeat that for all 3. Now I've got them all marked. I'm just going to have to drill. I'm going to drill just above this seam at the bottom here. So I've used my 10mm bit to make this hole. This is a 13mm elbow, so we'll just have to force it in. If it doesn't fit, you just have to make the hole a little bigger. Okay, so after making the hole a little bigger, I've managed to get it in. The elbow is in. So this is right here what can happen if you don't make the correct size hole and you force it in. It can make a hole in the bucket with an extension. I do, however, have some waterproof tape, and let's see how that works out. This waterproof flashing tape also bought for about 25 Rand, and let's see whether it will do as advertised. As you can see, I've coated the outside as well as the inside of that breakage, and I'm just going to now go on the opposite side and drill. Let's attempt that again on the opposite end. Let's see if it fits before even trying to force anything in. It's almost there. Let me just make it a little bit bigger, and we are in. However, there's a slight crack there at the bottom. I'm just going to put silicone around it. This is your usual home silicone. I probably bought it for about 40 or 50 Rand. Easy to use than a gun. Okay, so there's the little bit of silicone that I put to prevent the drip. And okay, there we are on. So far I've used 2 emergency measures for the first bucket, and hopefully the rest of the buckets won't require any additional force. By the way, this is a 12mm pipe, so which is perfect for a 13mm elbow to go in with quite a tight fit.